Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934. It is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese. Of course.
It's okay, I'll take it from here.
Hey, the guy get a seat.
For the love of palmetto cheese.
So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and I have a great show for you today. We'll get into that in a second, but I have to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had a good time eating your turkey with your family and your friends. And also, we know what now is. It is called the stretch run. The stretch run to Christmas, the Christmas parties, the holiday time. It's going to be great. Looking forward to that, but it's also another stretch run. It's a critical stretch run for both the Saints and the LSU Tigers. It has been a magical year for both these teams. I mean, think about it. Think about what the Saints are doing, and think about LSU, what Joe Burrow and company are doing. But when you go back, does this remind you of something? Like 2011, for instance, what a great, great year that was. However, neither team won the title, so it's hard to remember. But I'm going to remind you a couple things. That New Orleans Saints team was one of the best offensive teams in the history of the game. They scored 547 points. Their point differential against their opponent was 13 points a game. They were wiping people out. That is hard to do in the NFL, to outscore people by 13. We all know what happened in the playoffs. They had that crazy finish against the San Francisco 49ers back in 2011. It was January of 2012. 4 game-winning touchdowns. You thought, unfortunately, San Francisco got the last one. Hopefully it won't end that way again this year. But the LSU Tigers, this is the one I think people forget. This regular season might rank as the best, possibly, certainly if they win the national championship. But 2011, let me remind you of something. That team was 13-0 before eventually losing Alabama in the national championship game. Not just 13-0. That regular season was deemed one of the best regular seasons, if not the best, in modern football history. And I'm going to tell you a little reason why. That team scored, and they didn't give up a whole lot of points. That team beat the tar out of literally every team they played. We're talking, it started with Oregon. There's so many teams they played in the top 10, so many teams in the top 25. And when you go down to it, when you're beating the SEC opponents, I'm talking your SEC opponents, which all of them, many of them went to bowls, 255 points. You outscored just your SEC opponents that year. You're rolling. You scored 500 points yourself. You only gave up about 140, so yet you basically scored 40 points a game. You gave up 10, and there's the thing. When you go to West Virginia, a top 10 team, you had Oregon, Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, Arkansas was 10-2 that year. Georgia beat the pants off of them. You're talking about a 32-point win over Georgia, 24 over Arkansas, who, like I said, was 10-2 that season after the bowl. 49 over Ole Miss, 35 over Auburn, 31 over a good Tennessee team back then, 30 over Florida, who beat Ohio State in the bowl, by the way, 28 over Kentucky, 26 on the road at West Virginia, 13 against Oregon in the Jerry Dome, 46 against Northwestern. I mean, it just went on and on and on. But bottom line, it's not just how they did. It's how the bowl teams that they played did in the bowls. You're talking about LSU. They beat the winner of the Music City. That was obviously a big one. Car Care Bowl, that was Tennessee. Mississippi State was the other one. We're talking about the winner of the Peach Bowl, that was Auburn. The winner of the Cotton Bowl, that was Arkansas. The winner of the Rose Bowl, that was Oregon. The winner of the Orange Bowl, which was West Virginia. And oh yeah, the eventual national champion, you beat them too. Of course, that was the Alabama Crimson Tide. The only loss on that schedule you had was Georgia, but it took 3 overtimes to beat them in their bowl loss to Michigan State. So that's a good run you had right there. It didn't end in a championship, but unfortunately, that is what people remember. They don't remember necessarily, unless you're a hardcore Tiger fan, how great the season was. They remember the disappointment of the end. And that's how both of those seasons ended. One was just completely different than the others, demoralizing shutout against Alabama in the championship in your home state, and the other one was obviously a heartbreaking loss in heartbreaking fashion against the San Francisco 49ers. How will this team do? How will these two teams do when they go to the playoffs? LSU is a virtual lock to be in the playoffs regardless of what happens in the Georgia game. And going forward, this is going to be interesting to see because they don't have to just beat one opponent this time in the playoffs. You have to beat two. And we all know the Saints. They are not playing nearly as well as that 2011 team. But you know what? They are slowly getting momentum with Drew Brees back. So it should be fun to watch for the next month, possibly 2 months when you're talking Super Bowl. So stay tuned, New Orleans. Strap up because it's going to be a wild ride to the finish. Stay tuned because I have Zach Strief right here next on Prime Time Sports. We'll see you in a second.
Hey, New Orleans, get ready for some rugby. There's a new pro sports team in town, and it's NOLA Gold. Now, I can tell you, once rugby gets in your blood, you never lose that bond. I'm John Goodman. Get your tickets now at nolagoldrugby.com, and I'll see you in the scrum.
Make no mistake about it, life's more fun with seafood.
Oysters don't swim.
They do in butter.
What'd you get?
A little bit of everything to make everyone happy.
Acme Oyster House.
Life really is more fun with seafood.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the Mid-City Lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Handling a gator like this can be scary, and this is pretty risky too. But do you know what's really dangerous? Dealing with the insurance company after your car wreck. If you've been injured, get a fighter. That's why you need to call me. I'm not afraid to handle them, and I'll fight to get you every dollar you deserve. So if you've been hurt, hire a professional. Just call me. Get it done.
Get Gordon. Get it done.
Call 1-800-653-9968.
Did you know that GMFS Mortgage is the largest independent mortgage company in Louisiana? Their 250 employees have helped over 79,000 customers make the dream of home ownership come true. They funded over $12.9 billion in loans right here in Southeast Louisiana. If you're ready to buy, build, or renovate a new home, or just need to refinance, call the company born and raised here, GMFS Mortgage.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese. Of course.
It's okay, I'll take it from here.
Hey, the guy get a seat.
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Primetime Sports with Scott Alexander is underwritten by Task Performance.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, listen, like we said in the open, this has been a magical year, not only for the LSU Tigers. Hey, the New Orleans Saints are rolling right along. We talked about that 2011 team, how great they were, but this team is a little different. Obviously, they're winning on a pretty much the same pace, but we got right now the guy that used to be blocking for Drew Brees. Now he talks about Drew Brees. His name is Zach Strief, and he is now the voice of the Saints for about a year and a half, and here he is. What's up, my friend? How are you, bud?
Good to see you, buddy.
Everything going well?
Everything's great, man. You can't complain, right? You're into the holidays. You got Saints at 9-2. I mean, what more do you want?
Yeah, I mean, like 10-1. I don't know.
Yeah.
The fact is, they're rolling right now. Listen, first of all, I want to talk about you as a broadcaster. We've done this before. I talked to you last year after your full season. I talked to you midway through that first season. Now you're about 2/3 through season number 2. What's your take on this job? What are you thinking?
Well, it's still the coolest job imaginable, right? I mean, it's a lot of fun, and Deuce and I think more than anything, we just enjoy it, right? I mean, we literally have a good time.
You do have a great time.
I look forward to game day. I mean, I really do look forward to getting into the booth. So, in that respect, it's going great. You know, it's still, man, there's just so much growth that still has to happen, and you kind of. Again, we talked about it last year. The interesting part is that growth is kind of happening in front of everybody, and
right.
Every time I screw something up, it's you can't see a camera on me, but I'm slapping myself in the forehead.
Ricky and Ronnie will let you know. Hey, Ronnie, hey, look at Zach Strief. He said he called that guy the wrong name.
Yeah.
But as far as preparing for an NFL game as a player, preparing for an NFL game as a broadcaster, what's the differences and similarities?
Well, I think that there's a lot of similarities in the fact that you go into the game and you don't want your preparation to be detrimental to you in any way, right? So you don't want to walk into a football game as a player and see a look that you've never seen because you didn't spend enough time looking.
Right.
You don't want to have that happen because you immediately in that moment are like, you regret like not spending time. It's the same deal as a broadcaster, right? So if some guy that is kind of obscure to everybody suddenly is having a huge game and I don't have information on him, then you feel that same way, like, man, I should have spent more time doing it. And so I think as a player, and this is just kind of me personally, that's the fear of that regret.
You used the word. I was going to say the fear of embarrassment. I'm it's not knowing what the guy is.
Exactly. So, and that pushes you to prepare and spend the time that you need to spend to not end up in that situation. But, those things are similar. Now, the difference is nobody gets hurt if I didn't prepare enough as a broadcaster, right? It reflects negatively on me and pretty much me alone.
Right.
Whereas if I didn't do something correctly on the field, it might have ended up on Drew Brees' forehead.
Right.
And that's a lot more pressure applied in that situation.
Well, I'm going to tell you, even at the highest level, when a backup quarterback comes in, Tim Brando sometimes grabbing that media guy hit me over the head and said, find out something. So it'll always happen. As far as the Saints go, listen, we all figured after the last 2 seasons coming out of the playoffs, it was obviously rough finishes. I mean, as rough as you can possibly imagine. There was 2 ways you go. Colin Cowart thought it might go one way. He thought, hey, this Saints team is done. They're toast. I've seen it before. Whatever. He said 7-9 at best. And then there's the school of thought that we had. It's like, you're very angry. You're very focused. You're very motivated. And this team seems to have done that. Talk about that rise there.
Here's one of the fascinating things about this roster is, the jump board to all this success the last 2 years was really the 17 draft class, right?
Yeah, okay.
All those guys know is disappointment. They know success and then disappointment. And I think because of that, the team, it's not a situation where a team has never experienced that and they crumble with it.
Yeah.
They've experienced it twice, and they've experienced it with their young core, which are usually the guys that struggle in those situations. So the Saints, more than anything else, are battle tested. And I think as the season goes on, you're going to see that come forward. You're going to see an entire roster, because it is the core of this team has been the same for each one of these years, 17, 18, 19.
Sure.
And I think you're going to see that kind of come forward. I think in these big games is when you're going to see this team at its best. And Drew's been talking about it for 3 weeks. We haven't played our best game yet.
No,
we
I agree.
haven't come close to it yet. And I think people watching would acknowledge that as well. And so I think as the games get bigger, you've got a locker room full of guys that understand the gravity of those situations, that have come out on the other side of it in such horrible ways that I think they'll be prepared for those moments more than anybody else. I think this team's the most prepared out of those groups to make a run.
You know, I'm glad you just said that, because in 2011 it seemed, at least to me, I was living in Atlanta at the time, but watching every game certainly, that they pulled out their best game each game. I mean, it just seemed like this team could drive through anybody like a hot knife of going through butter. But point being is, it's like this team, as far as that 2011 team, and I don't want to compare because that went into disappointment as well. How does this team win consistently compared to that one? Because we knew that one, they could score on anybody.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that are different. One, the offenses are really structured differently.
Right.
So 2011 was super explosive, right? We were a big play waiting to happen, right? And so you saw all these, big bombs and long runs and big scores, right? And then, behind that group was a defense that, was I don't think near what this one is.
Right on.
Right, and so, that team was a little bit different. I think the skill players, the weapons on that team across the board were better. Drew Brees was in a different place. That was 8 years ago. Right. And so that team was built to outscore people. This team is built to wear you down and beat you into the ground. Right? They've established tons of depth on the offensive and defensive lines, elite units on both sides. Right? When they play their best, are running the football consistently, right? The defense is far more dominant than it was then, and really the offense is built to control the football. So we've seen that, right? The Saints are third in the NFL in time of possession.
Yes, they
the
are.
games where they've been good, we're leaving the first quarter and it's 12-3 time of possession, right? And so they're just different, and yet they both have an identity, which is most important if you're going to make a run. Who are you? What kind of team are you? This team understands who they are. Now, that doesn't mean every week you go out and execute what you are, but they know what they are. They know they're a ball possession team offensively. They know defensively that they are not the team that's going to give up 35 points in a game and walk home happy because they got to win, right? They're going to apply pressure. They're going to stop the run. They're going to force you to throw the ball on two very good corners. They know who they are, and when you get into playoff runs, that's super important.
We're going to come back with you because you mentioned something about elite defensive line and offensive line. One of those lines is injured right now. We're going to talk to Zach Strief coming right back and ask him, hey, what's it mean with these two guys injured? How are they going to replace them? Does it matter in the future? Are they coming back, et cetera? And also, I want to get into possible playoff opponents. The NFC is very stacked this year, as you know. The AFC may be strong up top, but they're a little weaker in the middle. The NFC is strong all the way through. We're going to talk about those matchups coming up next on Primetime Sports.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese. Of course.
It's okay. I'll take it from here.
Hey, the guy get a seat.
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Did you know that GMFS Mortgage is the largest independent mortgage company in Louisiana? Their 250 employees have helped over 79,000 customers make the dream of home ownership come true. They funded over $12.9 billion in loans right here in Southeast Louisiana. If you're ready to buy, build, or renovate a new home, or just need to refinance, call the company born and raised here, GMFS Mortgage.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll at Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
Make no mistake about it. Life's more fun with seafood.
Oysters don't swim.
They do in butter.
What'd you get? A little bit of everything to make everyone happy.
Acme Oyster House. Life really is more fun with seafood.
Handling a gator like this can be scary, and this is pretty risky too. But do you know what's really dangerous? Dealing with the insurance company after your car wreck. If you've been injured, get a fighter. That's why you need to call me. I'm not afraid to handle them, and I'll fight to get you every dollar you deserve. So if you've been hurt, hire a professional. Just call me. Get it done.
Get Gordon. Get it done.
Call 1-800-653-9968.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. We're with 12-year Saints veteran Zach Strief. Now he's a 2-year broadcaster in the booth with, of course, Deuce McAllister up there calling the Saints games each and every week. So nobody better right now to talk about the state of the Saints and what they're going to do in the future than Zach. Zach, we talked about the offensive line and defensive lines being elite. That's something with defensive line. That's kind of a new thing compared to what they've seen in those 7-9 season. That's been nice. But this offensive line, obviously, you played with Teron Armstead. You played with Andrus Peat. Andrus Peat's, he's probably not going to be back for a month or so. And Teron Armstead's got that high ankle sprain. What are your thoughts on them coming back? And then talk about their replacements a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andrus's is probably a little bit more finite because, he had a broken arm. They have a good feel for how long that's going to take. I think they put a plate in on it. I think it's a little bit more clear. Whereas a high ankle sprain can go such a big range, right? So, we'll have to see with Teron. I know, that Teron's focus is going to be how do I get back for San Francisco, because that is a huge game.
December 8th is around the corner.
It's right around the corner. I mean, it's next. It's not this coming weekend, the following weekend. So it's right there. Offensive linemen can deal with those a little bit better. You don't have to be as dynamic in that joint as someone else does. Now, of course, Teron being a dynamic athlete, it's a little bit harder. But Teron has played on worse, and he's a tough guy. I mean, we've watched him play games on one leg, basically.
Right.
And so, I think that will be his mindset. I don't know that he can pull it off. I don't know how severe it is, but I think that'll be the thought. Now, you look, behind those guys, right? Yeah. So Nick Easton, last week Patrick Omameh filled in the game. And this is one of the things I loved about what the Saints did this offseason. They went out and said, we're not adding depth with rookies that we don't know how they're going to hold up. We're going to go and get established veterans that are battle-tested, that we can plug in and know, no matter what, this is a guy that knows what he's getting himself into.
Absolutely.
Right? We're not rolling the dice. And now, I'll tell you this. They are really high on Ethan Greenidge. And I don't know that Ethan doesn't get a chance to start at left tackle in this game.
Wow.
So I don't know that, right? I don't know. But
you got inside scoop. What do you mean you don't know?
Remember that on game day, they're keeping 7 linemen active. Yeah. And so, Patrick is a guy who has more flexibility at all the positions. So Patrick's really been a starter at guard in his career. The Saints bring him in, put him at tackle, which really, he fits from a body type. He's a long player, physical athlete. I think more than anything, Patrick Omameh will go in and battle.
Right.
It'll be a fight. And you like that with your backup. Nick Easton, I think, has played at a very high level, through these last 2 games.
Yeah.
And again, he was a big signing for the Saints.
Yes, he was.
They were fortunate that they found Eric McCoy in the draft, and he's been a diamond, in the second round for the Saints. So I think you feel comfortable with those 2 guys. But going into the San Francisco game, you're going to want to have Teron back.
In particular, with the backups, the offensive, defensive line, constant warfare the entire game. That somebody's bound to get hurt. They always do. You have to have the backups, and it looks like they have them this year. And they've had them in the past, but not quite as good. Hey, moving forward with the Saints in the long big picture. You mentioned San Francisco. That's a big game, mainly because you win. You do have the edge. You tied with them, but you have the home field advantage against them at least because you've got the tiebreaker. Going forward, is that the main thing? Because San Francisco, I wasn't believing in them, and finally they've been smacking me in the face, and I said, you got to believe because that defensive line is good, the offense is good enough, and the secondary is led by Richard Sherman. What are your thoughts on them and moving forward?
You're not alone, right? Lots of people were kind of like, prove it to me. Well, we're far enough into the season that they've proved it to everybody. I think the San Francisco 49ers are the single biggest threat in the NFC to the South, right, or to the Saints right now.
I agree.
And listen, we don't want to go to Green Bay to play a game in January, right? You don't want to do that. And so that win by the 49ers really helped the Saints, in my opinion, because they do still get them. So a win against the 49ers gets them the 1 seed if everybody wins out. Right. So they get to control their destiny, which is good. But the San Francisco 49ers are the result of being bad for 7 years and focusing on one position. The defensive line is so crazy, right? I mean, I think there's 5 top 10 picks in the defensive line.
Right.
They only put 4 on the field at a time, right? So you're bringing a top 10 pick off. So, you look
That's crazy.
It's amazing. And they've gotten players that are physically imposing. DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstrong, Armstead, both of those guys are big, tall, long players. Obviously, they go and get Nick Bosa this year, and he's been everything that they could have hoped and more. So, I think the defense is really built on speed with an elite defensive line. It's a big deal for the Saints not to have to go to San Francisco and see that team in the playoffs.
Okay, Seattle's 9-2. I mean, well, obviously now they might be 10-2. So the fact is you got Seattle, you got other teams like Minnesota, you got the Dallas Cowboys. Possibly that's going to be the lowest winning team from a division as far as record goes. But there's other teams, Green Bay Packers, that can beat the Saints. Do you think? Is this one of these situations, do you think it's only San Francisco or any of these other teams can get it done?
I don't think there's a team that's going to be in the playoffs that the Saints are going to have an easy win. I mean, I think all those teams, you look at Dallas from a talent standpoint, that team is incredibly talented. They just can't put the product on the field, right? They just have not been consistent this year. Obviously, Green Bay and how they've been playing, but when you're facing Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs, who knows, right? I mean, that guy with almost anything around him.
He's Aaron Rodgers.
He's Aaron Rodgers. And then you look at how, Russ Wilson has played this season. Obviously, the Saints got a win in Seattle under interesting circumstances, and yet any of those football teams.
You can't feel confident going to Seattle ever.
No, you don't want to go to Seattle either, right? So, all those are tough. It is an incredibly deep group this year. The Minnesota Vikings, right? One of the top defenses in football.
It's scary, though.
Yeah,
it really is.
Listen, it's going to be a tough road, through the playoffs. And I think that's why that 1 seed is so important this year, because no matter who you're getting in these playoffs, it's a team that could have started the year a different way and ended up in the 1 seed. They're all capable of that.
But it's great for a fan. I mean,
it's great.
If you're a fan watching the NFC playoffs, you're going to be in love. And speaking of in love, I know your wife loves these shirts, your beautiful wife, and she's got to have another baby for you.
Yes.
Or have a baby for you.
And I appreciate that. It's always better to give the gift to the wife.
To the wife.
I'm going to give her one, and I'm going to tell her I bought the other one, so that we both look good.
We both look good. And you can tell the same with these gift certificates.
Awesome. Yeah,
I know she loves Shades Della Shades, right?
She does, yes.
Hey, you're doing fantastic, man. I'm very proud of you, and I'm glad I'm part of your team. Hey, Zach Strief right there. Continue to listen to 870 AM. Turn the TV volume down and check them out each and every week, him and Deuce McAllister. Come on, two Saints. You want to listen to that, and they're a lot of fun, and they get along. It's kind of cool. Hey, I appreciate you. I want to thank Albert DuPont, my producer, and everybody at Loyola, WWL, and, of course, CST. We'll see you next week right here on Primetime Sports.
Turn up, turn up.
So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that.